and welcome to the show. Today, we have a tip for you. Well, kind of a tip. It's a way to do things. The other day, we were doing an F-150. I know, right? What are the odds of that? And we were making the tweeter mounts to go up into the A-pillar. Something similar like this with this Alpine tweeter. And we came up with a new process because we got a new tool. These are the Smart Circle System, or SCS. What they're used for is routering out circles. So you have the holes, and then you have the exteriors. So if you needed to round something off to this size. In this case, we had a tweeter. And what we needed to do is make a mount so that the tweeter wasn't going to touch the actual plastic. It needed to sit off of it because it was a titanium tweeter, not this particular tweeter. And if it were to touch, it would dent the titanium. We didn't want that to happen. That meant we had to come up with a mount that looked like the factory. First step we needed to do was figure out if this tweeter was the right size for one of these holes. It's the 1.375 hole. The idea was if we router out this, that'll give us something we can mount into this. But then we need some way to mount it. The next size up is almost the size of the tweeter itself. So that was developing a plan. What we grabbed is a piece of 1/8 inch, piece of 1/4 inch, and then a small piece of 1/8 inch as well. Now this stuff's scrap. It's what we get from the sign shop. And this is all Centra. This is a 3x3 piece, and this is a 4x4 piece. The first thing we want to do is find our center. Now that we have our center, we're going to take the thinner 1/8 inch and we're going to router out this hole into the 1/8 inch. For that, we'll use some template tape, flip it over and line up our crosshairs. And then press it, make sure it's nice and tight. And then we'll drill a hole. And now we'll take it over to the router. We always want to check our bearing height when we come over to the router station. We want it high enough to clear what we're routering, but low enough so it doesn't chew into our template. Lock it in place. Peel off your template. Make sure your tweeter fits into the hole. Perfect. Let's just set this aside and grab our 1/4 inch, and we're going to do the same thing we just did into the next size hole up, the one that's almost the size of the tweeter. Back at the router, we'll check our bearing height again. Always peel your tape off of your template. Don't leave it on there for the next guy. This is almost the right size. We're just going to scrape off a little bit of the inside to make it a little bigger. That's just what we needed. We needed like a one go around, 30/2 of an inch. Next, we're gonna grab one of these. What we wanna do is we wanna make this exterior round. We want this to be about 1/4 of an inch thick. We're at 1.5 inches. We have a 1 7/8, which is close enough. And this is why we drew the crosshairs on there. We're gonna tape this on, lining it up with those crosshairs. Get it lined up and press it tight. Now we don't obviously have to drill any holes, we just have to router out this exterior. I like to remove my tape so it doesn't gum up my bearing. Our bearing height will be the same because we just did 1/4 inch. Pop it off. What we have is our ring for our tweeter and our flush mount. We want to stack those on top of one another just to do one more check. They fit good. Go over this with your finger and make sure there's no little burrs sticking off it. It's time for some CA glue. I like to get some on it and then take a zip tie, spread it around so that it gets a nice even layer. For this, we're going to use the aerosol activator. Put our tweeter back into place, then line the two of them up using the tweeter to do that. Once you have it lined up, pull the tweeter back out, hit it with your activator. For this particular tweeter, it had a set of arms that were this length here. We want to line it up with the lines we have already drawn. Make sure it's in the center. We have our two lines drawn on here, but we don't need this. So we're going to go over to the router and we're going to router that off. But before we do that, we're going to score our plastic to make our line deeper. Now we'll go over to the router. Since we're using 1/8 inch, we'll adjust our bearing height again, lowering it back down, locking it in place. Drop our tweeter back into place, make sure that it's flush with the top surface. That's why we have this bar, is we're gonna heat this up and use it to form our lock. It is hot, so be careful. Use a flat surface to work it into all the nooks and crannies of your tweeter. It helps to just kind of start on one side and work your way over. That way, if you need to, you can apply a little bit more heat to the other side. You have a super thin drill bit. Drill 2 holes on either side. Put 2 screws into the little holes that you just drilled and tighten it down. I'm gonna go back over and remove the excess. A couple passes with a razor knife to break it up enough to do that. For the secondary holes that you're gonna drill, you're gonna wanna line this up with your mount and make sure you drill them into the right spot. And there you have it. There's your tweeter mount, and it'll bolt right into place now. For that, we'll go ahead and apply a little bit of black spray paint to the front of it so that you can't see it through the grill. Other than that, that thing's done. Fernando?
On to the next one, guys.
You guys have a great night as always. We'll see you later next time.
Bye.